All right, what's up, y'all? Welcome into GC Live. Y'all know the deal. Every Thursday here live from BP Skinner in the Vista. Like we tell you, if you're looking for either a game day fit or maybe need a new suit, maybe you're getting married, big event, whatever it is, come by, see our guy Brent. He's going to take care of any and all of that for you. We'll also tell you here in a moment about our friend Clint Hammond, presenting sponsor here of the show. This is the official South Carolina versus Texas A&M preview show here on GC Live. As you know, I'm Wes. He is Chris. And I feel like it's almost snuck up on us a little bit, Chris, to be a post-bye week game. Like it felt like there's been a month since Carolina played. But then at the same time, I feel like the actual game week itself has kind of flown by. And pretty soon we're going to kick this thing off at Williams-Brice Stadium on Saturday night.
Yeah, man, exciting stuff. Back at Williams-Brice Stadium, back for a night game, which I think a lot of fans are keyed up about, excited about. You're coming off of, in one way, a big win. Last time you actually lined it up and played football, you had the thrilling win over Oklahoma where you dominated basically from start to finish. And as Shane Beamer said the other day, Wes, you almost would have rather, okay, let's go play again, right? Like we just had probably our best performance, or definitely our best performance of the season. Let's roll right into game week and keep it going. But at the same time, bye week also came at a good time. You get a little extra prep time. You get a little extra rest. You get an opportunity to, help some guys heal from some bumps and bruises, but also get a guy back in Jared Brown at receiver. He's supposed to play. So there are some benefits to having that bye week as well. So it has seemed like a while since the Gamecocks have played. Get to see it one more time on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think across sports, you do hear different guys say that, like, hey, if we're on a roll, you want to just keep playing.
Yep.
Especially in baseball, I feel like it's such a timing-based game. If a team is hitting, they want to just keep hitting. They don't want days off. And, football, I can see it going both ways. I do think you start stacking SEC game after SEC game, those bumps, those bruises, they do start to add up. If you're Carolina, would you have been okay with maybe one more week and then the bye week and then play 4 straight at the end? Maybe. I mean, this 5 games, as we know, it's going to be a grind, and you're going to have guys that get bumps and bruises during this 5-game stretch where maybe you were wishing the bye week was a little bit later. But for the most part, I think it timed out pretty well, Chris. And what do you think the value is to LaNorris Sellers having a true bye week? Like I think that was a little bit maybe – like, speaking of momentum, I think having to, if you're LaNorris Sellers, having to take a couple weeks off, losing those practice reps, really, to me, losing the Akron game, if you're Sellers, like, just not being able to go out there and throw the ball against, frankly, a defense that you're going to have receivers a good bit more open than you're used to seeing against SEC defenses, and a chance to go make some plays. I thought that was some valuable time that was certainly missed, both in terms of practice time and kind of some in-game practice time, to be completely honest, that you just did not have. This time around, Sellers is healthy. Rocket is healthy. Like you said, Jared Brown still trending heavily towards him being back this week. Beamer basically said he will be back, probable on the SEC player availability report.
Yep.
And so for the most part, you're going to have your entire array of players on offense coming off of a bye week where you maybe this time got to actually focus in a little bit on maybe tweaking some things on offense.
Yeah, that's a great point. It has gotten lost. I think there are a few things that have gotten lost about LaNorris Sellers this year. And, you can start with the fact that sometimes there have been some unrealistic expectations with him being a freshman. Now, have there been some things that even for a freshman, you got to do a little bit better? Yes, with the ball security and things like that. Shane Beamer's talked about that. And he mentioned the other week, Wes, that, hey, these guys aren't freshmen anymore. LaNorris Sellers isn't a freshman anymore. Josiah Thompson isn't a freshman anymore. That they are, right? But they're not in game 1. They're not in game 2. You've now gone through some of these battles. But that said, it's important to remember that Sellers, has missed some time. He's missed the Akron game. He missed, prep time leading up to the Akron game. He missed prep time leading up to the Ole Miss game. After that, he missed part of LSU. He missed part of Kentucky. This is not a guy that's even gone through a full slate of what he should have had, which is still not a lot as a freshman. On top of that, he's dealt with some difficult circumstances at times. The offensive line and the tight ends and the backs have struggled protecting at times. He's young, so he's had his own struggles to deal with. The run game at times has gotten stymied and not been as dynamic. So I think we've seen growth from Sellers. I've said this a lot from week one until now. The more practice he gets, the better he'll get. I think we've seen those improvements, and I think I totally agree with you. This week of practice, now we'll see what happens on the field, right? But there's no doubt that this week of practice is a benefit to him and will be of more benefit than the last one was against Ole Miss. Totally different set of circumstances.
So we always talk about this. There are like those kind of truisms that no matter what game you're playing in football, no matter who the opponents are, you could sit there and, hey, run the football, stop the run, win the turnover battle, all these things. One of them, especially if you think you could have a close game, which I think we all think this probably will be, especially if you think you're going to have potentially a low-scoring game, you start talking about what do you do in the red zone? And this is something Shane Beamer brought up earlier this week, and he said, he was going off of, I think, SEC versus SEC opponents. But actually, if you pull up the SEC stats, not just SEC versus SEC, but just in general, A&M still very much at the top in both, let's see, score percentage. So that's you get in the red zone. Do you get something out of it? Do you get a touchdown or a field goal? They right now are – this is actually an insane number. 96.97% of the time that they enter the red zone, they score. So that's got to be probably they've missed one opportunity this entire year. So 33 attempts, 32 scores. Quick look ahead to next week, by the way. Vanderbilt, number 2.
Oh,
they've been 32 attempts, 31 scores. If you change that over to what I think is actually the most important stat when it comes to this stuff, touchdown percentage.
Yes.
Which is, can you convert those into touchdowns, obviously, instead of field goals? A&M second in the SEC, behind only their in-state brethren, Texas. And their touchdown percentage, A&M's, is 72.73%. So I think as you look at this thing, you start talking about running, stopping the run, all these things. What happens, and this is something Will Helms hit on, if you're a Gamecock Central subscriber, hit on in the analytics piece, and that has been that A&M has not really been a team that has necessarily just gone up and down the field on teams. They haven't been that team that's just been dominant on offense, but they have been a team that has taken great advantage when they have had drives. And so, to me, one of those early, that's something you can say about every game, but comes into focus in this game for South Carolina is, can you force some field goals? Like, this feels like a game where field goals could be wins. Obviously, you don't want to give up drives at all. But if you get in those sort of goal line, goal-to-go situations, can you force some field goals if you're South Carolina?
Yeah, A&M, I was looking over some of what and listened to what Dow Loggins said during his Wednesday press conference yesterday. And he had a quote that I think was pretty interesting, or I might be kind of paraphrasing it, that nobody's been able to figure out A&M. Now, he's thinking of it from an offensive perspective against their defense, right? But just generally, I mean, this is a team that's lost just one game, and it was a season opener against Notre Dame. They haven't lost an SEC contest. A&M's won a lot of different types of games. They've blown teams out, like Missouri. They have come from behind, like they did against LSU. They won a close game against an inferior opponent in Bowling Green. They've played 2 quarterbacks, both switching them in game and, starting a quarterback when their other one was down. Marcel Reed started for Connor Wigman when he was down, replaced him against LSU when they were down 17-7. They've had a lot of different types of games. One other thing, Wes, when you look at the South Carolina team, they have gone pretty much as their turnover margin has gone, with the exception of the Akron game, because Akron was so outmatched. When South Carolina wins the turnover battle, they win. When they lose, they lose. And that's how it's gone. A&M's been different in that they have won a game where they lost the turnover margin. Now, it wasn't 5-1, right? They just lost it by 1. But this is a team that's been very resourceful. They're well coached. They play hard. They've taken advantage of their opportunities. Look at the LSU game, right? Marcel Reed only has to throw 2 passes in that game. Why? His defense put him in some really good spots. They were able to run the football. They kind of can morph into what you need to win games, which is, I think, really the mark of a good team.
Yeah, so let's look at the other side of the red zone sort of picture to this point. And it's kind of interesting because, as I said, A&M, this is when they're on offense. If they get inside the 20, they've scored every time but once this year. On the other side of the ball, you have a South Carolina defense that is 6th in the SEC, which, again, now we're talking about a 16-team league. They're tied for 6th in the SEC in touchdown percentage allowed. So only half the time that opponents get inside the 20 do they score a touchdown on this South Carolina defense, which is not necessarily elite. Ole Miss, this is actually an insane number as well. 30% allowed really by their defense. You got to think that might even out. I mean, that's an insane number. But so you look, Carolina been pretty good at least forcing field goals. And then A&M defensively, this actually could be a game where, at least to this point, both offenses maybe feel pretty good about their ability inside the red zone, because A&M, as good as they've been offensively, 15th in the league in red zone defense score percentage. So not touchdown percentage. They're more middle of the pack in touchdown percentage. I know we're getting a little deep in the weeds on stats here, which is something we don't normally do. But 89.4% of the time that you enter the red zone against the A&M defense, opponents have been able to score. So to me, it just kind of underlines again how important, like this to me feels like, you know how games take on their own sort of personality and flow. The LSU game for South Carolina this year, how many different plays were made by both teams where you're going, that was a game-changing play or a game-changing missed opportunity. And it was like it felt like there were 20 of them in that one game. This, to me, feels more like a game where if you miss out on one of your opportunities, it could really, really hurt you, because I think we're all kind of assuming this game is going to be played not necessarily in a box, but more kind of low-scoring, old-school SEC type of slugfest, I think.
Yeah, probably going to be just some big situations, right? You had a 3rd and 1 that you didn't get, or you took a sack on a 3rd and 8 when you had a man open, or, you drop a pass. Like, probably not as many, like you said, absolutely crazy. That LSU game was kind of an outlier, right? Like, as awesome as college football is, you're not going to see many games like that just on a week-to-week basis. This is another game for South Carolina where it looks like it's going to be pretty close in terms of score. You think it's probably a handful of plays here and there, and those are going to kind of be hidden, right? Like, it's not going to be a big flashy play necessarily, but there might be a couple of those big ones that you're able to point out. And one of these teams is going to walk away saying, hey, if we would have caught that pass on a long ball, if we would have, made that tackle, whatever it may be, I think there's probably, I agree with you, going to be a handful of those in this game that kind of determine the outcome.
Yeah, for sure. So other than red zone, and you and I haven't talked, at least on this show, since the coordinators spoke, was there anything that kind of stood out to you from either guy, Clayton White or Dow Loggins, in terms of either bye week or just this game in particular in terms of matchups?
Yeah, a couple of things. Well, one general point, Dow Loggins pointed out that he thought that the offense lost their intensity a little bit when they went up. We against Oklahoma, that is. Obviously, you're up 21-0. That can change your approach as, if you're Shane Beamer as a head coach, if you're Dow Loggins as an OC, you can kind of say, hey, we don't have to do as much. We don't have to force the issue. They obviously didn't go conservative in that game. Did they full out? Did they play a little bit more conservatively or carefully? Sure, absolutely. They're still out there throwing the ball around, but they, like I said, they don't have to force the issue. But that's something that Dow Loggins pointed out as, hey, I thought we maybe kind of relaxed a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so when you're thinking about things to clean up, obviously one thing you want to carry over from Oklahoma is ball security, which you did a great job of for the most part in that game, didn't turn it over. But that's one of the things that Yeah, it may not be protection, it may not be scheme, may not be play calling or what you're running, but it's nonetheless important. Come out with intensity, and I think they will in this game. Another one was just very obvious for this game. Dowell Loggins pointed out, hey, A&M's got guys up front, right? I think he called them racers. They have guys
erasers.
Erasers, okay. They got guys that can just get after you up front. And you look at Nick Scorton, the Purdue transfer, Shamar Stewart. They've got another Shamar who was also a former 5-star Shamar up front. They've got guys, and this is the case every year with A&M, right? They had some that left. They've got more in the hopper, and that's the case. Really, not something South Carolina has not seen before. They played that Ole Miss front that you mentioned, Wes, didn't go as well. They've got guys up front that can make life difficult, and he even harkened back to the LSU game. LSU ended up having a lot of trouble. Garrett Nussmeier and even that really good LSU offensive line protecting, and then they started putting the ball in danger. 3 second-half picks. So if you're looking for a couple things to watch for, how does South Carolina handle that pressure up front?
Well, I think Elko did a fantastic job in the second half of that game of heating up LSU.
Yeah.
And they got really aggressive, man. And we talked about this at some point this week. I don't remember what show, but that's a pretty talented LSU wide receiver core.
Yep.
And A&M just said, look, hey, we're down. We've got to make something happen. We're going to be more aggressive up front and play either, I couldn't tell, like man-to-man on the back end or some type of match man-to-man or like a match zone that kind of becomes man-to-man. But they're basically saying, look, we're okay with that. And so I thought they did play well on the back end, but whatever he is dialing up pressure-wise, it started to really get home. And they're very talented up front, as you said. I don't know if they have like the pure pass rushers as maybe an Ole Miss or even a South Carolina, just in terms of like specifically pass rush. But in terms of just big, physical, athletic, getting off blocks, stopping the run, which we know is something that has been very just kind of up and down for South Carolina this year. I think offensively, that's what scares you. I think if you're a Gamecock fan out there, is two sides of that. If A&M stops you in the running game on early downs, they do what has just been kryptonite for South Carolina, and they put you in those third longs where you have to throw. Well, that's when they're going to stack on extra pressure guys. That's what they're going to say, hey, we're going to dare these wide receivers to get open. We're going to dare this O-line to pick us up. And then there's going to be, you got to let these routes develop down the field. And we've seen South Carolina, when they have had time, they've had some really just unique calls on this year on offense. And I do think there's something to be said. There's this thought out there of Gamecock fans saying, well, some of Dowell Loggins stuff takes a while to develop. Or it's downfield. There is something to be said for that. They do have some long developing routes that we have seen hit, and we've seen South Carolina try to hit those, and it just, there's not time for it to work. Now, I think some of that's been a little overblown. There was that thing, there's not even a slant in the playbook. That's not true. South Carolina actually ran several slants against LSU because they played a lot of man defense. We've seen the kind of mesh concept where you run the two shallows across of each other. If A&M is playing that match zone, or if they're playing true man-to-man, I think you're going to see a lot of that again. You're going to have to get the ball out quick, but you're going to need for these wide receivers to get separation. It almost feels to me like a game. They're going to have to be hard-headed with the run to an extent. But I don't know if you can just go in there and say, hey, we're going to run the ball on first down, second down, third down, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. We'll get a first down. It does not feel like a front that you should feel very confident doing that against. You almost maybe have to work backwards, throw the ball some on first down, and then try to reintroduce the running game.
Yeah, I like that thought, working in reverse a little bit. You're going to have to hit some explosives, I think, in this game, right? I mean, just generally, and we can say this not just about when we're projecting the matchup against A&M, but from what we've seen so far from this team, this isn't a South Carolina team that's built to, hey, we're going to put together 4 75-yard drives in a game. You haven't really seen that from them, but they can make some big plays. They can move the football. They can let their defense, carry that burden and be able to run it a little bit. So I think it's going to have to be the same plan against A&M. You are going to need to pop some runs. You're going to have to manufacture, I think, some runs. I think you're going to have to be creative. And another thing, along those same lines, LaNorris Sellers with his legs, I did go back and look, Wes. A&M's played some quarterbacks that have some mobility. They played Riley Leonard at Notre Dame. They played Taylor Green from Arkansas. DJ Lagway at Florida was not the starter at that time, but he played some in the game. There's another one or two mixed in there too. They have done a really good job of holding mobile quarterbacks at bay. If you look through the stat book, it's going to be sack adjusted, but they've done a great job with it. Riley Leonard was the one game they lost where he had 65, 70 yards in the game. The rest of them are very low numbers. Can LaNorris Sellers make a difference for you in the run game as a guy you have to account for? He'll certainly be a different type of runner, I think, than they've seen.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's going to be a key for Carolina. These final 5 games is, can you get Sellers without having to run him 25 times a game, without having to call these design runs? Typically, I think it's safer for your quarterback when he takes off running within the flow of a play than design runs are. Design runs, typically, your guy's getting hit. If you're outside the pocket and you just happen to see, oh, I have green grass in front of me, let me run, then that space is already naturally there, and you can kind of make some decisions there. All right, let me just not get hit. I do think making those proper decisions, when to extend, when to get hit, when to throw the football, when to throw the football away, obviously has been I think that's a process for every quarterback that plays anywhere that has that ability. It's easy if you just don't have the ability to run, because then you're just like, well, I can't run, but if you're Sellers, it's like
he can run.
It's a blessing, but that comes with another array of decisions, and so we'll see what that looks like. But I do want to point out something that was pointed out to us a long time ago, and this actually goes all the way to Alabama game. There's so many different layers to these decisions. You remember the play early on where he slid short of the first down?
Yep.
And you're going, Kyle, that extended the drive. And then Carolina does not get the first down on the next play.
Yep.
And so you're going, that was a first down opportunity that we kind of just gave back to him. But then you kind of zoom out a little bit and you go, well, there were 2 defenders. And remember when Sellers was asked preseason, how do you make the decision? They don't want you to get hit much. How do you make the decision on when you get down and when you just put your head down? Because we know you're a big guy that can run through people. And the coaching point was, if there's one guy and you feel good about it, truck him. If it's multiple guys, protect yourself. So you have all these layers. Now, Sellers has that to do over. He's probably going to default back to, well, it's 2 guys, but I want to get this first down.
I get this, yeah.
But if your coaching point, and I'm not knocking the coaching point, I think that makes sense in a global standpoint, right?
Yeah.
But that's the thing about a young quarterback. You're seeing it's like that may be the right decision 98% of the time. The veteran quarterback knows about the 2%.
Yeah.
The younger quarterback, it takes time to stack all those experiences together. I think one of the biggest keys to South Carolina, as we go through kind of what's going to happen these next 5 games, starting this weekend, does Sellers start to sort of turn the page a little bit from, hey, he's still a young quarterback, to, wow, we're starting to see him make some, not even veteran, but where you're a step farther ahead than what you see when you're seeing everything for the first time, I think.
Yeah, and this will be a great test, right? I mean, if he comes out of this game and South Carolina wins and he's taken care of the ball and played well and, administered the offense, but also made some game-changing plays, whether that's, scrambling for a first down, throwing a deep ball, converting a big 3rd or 4th down through the air. This is an A&M defense that's made some really good quarterbacks not look very good this year. I mean, I mentioned Taylor Green earlier, Bobby Petrino, like Arkansas, they put up points. He's ran the ball. He's passed the ball. They scored, I think, 17 in that game. Look at last week. Heck, Garrett Nussmeier has been, Wes, one of the best quarterbacks in college football. Really good offensive line, good receiving core, tough kid. 3 picks in the second half. You know, the pressure got – now, Nussmeier's not a guy that's played, 40 games in his college career, but he is a guy that's played now and has been really, really good and is battle-tested, right? Garrett Nussmeier's gone up against the South Carolina defense and passed that test for the most part and won the game. Point is, this is an A&M defense that can make life tough on you, and so this will be another opportunity for Sellers to go prove himself and grow.
Yeah, I frankly have – I thought, and I was still thinking this, leading up to halftime of the game on Saturday, I thought Nussmeier was the best quarterback that, at least in my personal opinion, that we've seen South Carolina play this year. I thought he was better than Dart, and I thought he was better than Milroe. And then, I'm glad I didn't tweet that thought because
wheels came off. Yeah,
the wheel. But now he is a gunslinger. Like we've seen that. Yes. Like he is fully willing to put the ball in danger. Yeah. But you have the positives and the negatives to that. But hey, speaking of quarterbacks, the other side, Marcel Reed at the end of the game last week was kind of, I thought Kirk and those guys crowned him. He's the guy now. Elko apparently did not get the memo because he's still, I think, pretending that Marcel Reed's not going to start this game. Would we all be kind of, I go as far as pretty shocked if Reed doesn't go, right?
Surprised, yeah, if he didn't.
If you do what he did last week, do you not kind of almost earn?
Yeah, I think so.
The next start, but however, it has been kind of interesting. This sort of thing of wait, they got their guy now.
Yeah,
there's evidence of him playing in other games this year that showed. Look, young quarterback, talented. Let's see what he becomes as well. He's not a finished product by any means. So this might be similar things other teams' media might say about LaNorris Sellers. Like, hey, those Gamecock guys talk him up and, he hasn't done this, this, and this. We'll see what happens on Saturday with Marcel Reed. But I think if you're Carolina, what you did against Jalen Milroe for the most part, Milroe got his a few times, but for the most part, you go into this feeling like your athleticism. One thing, Eric Kimry hopped on the radio show and told us he's not the biggest guy in the world. And that's more just we're talking about thickness.
Yeah.
Can this kid take the bruising of getting hit 20 times in a game potentially? I think those are all things that could factor in when you're talking about a fast, aggressive, and honestly very physical as well South Carolina defense.
Well, Connor Weigman, the other quarterback who started the LSU game, began the year as the starter. Reed started some games in his absence, and when Weigman came back, he was a starter. That means something, right? Now, if you're Mike Elko, the latest data that you have, the last thing that you saw about your team is Weigman really struggling against LSU's defensive front. We were talking about this earlier, Wes, looked very rattled, very out of sorts. He was seeing ghosts. He was actually seeing LSU Tiger defenders in his face a lot. But he did kind of seem to be just seeing some ghosts at times, the rush wasn't quite there and he thought it was there type of thing. He had trouble. I don't know why. So you see that, and then you see when you put Reed in the game down 17-7 with the benefit of the defense gave you the ball in the red zone and he scores on his first touch. But then what do? You take off. You only have to throw it twice. You can hand the ball off, play great defense, run the ball. Now, here's the thing. Maybe we see both. Maybe we see mostly Reed. Maybe we see all Reed. He's going to have to – I'll go on the record saying he's going to have to throw the ball more than twice in this game, right, to be able to win. So if South Carolina makes him more of a thrower, what does that mean? If you play Connor Weigman some, this South Carolina defensive line and pass rush can get after you. Mike Elko, you probably saw, Wes, he had big-time praise for this South Carolina defense, said it was the best one that they've seen all year so far. Very interesting decision for Elko on who to start and how to handle the rest of the game. Some of those decisions maybe you're making in real time based on what you're seeing.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if I made this point earlier, but we did talk about the pass rush and staying out of third and long. I want to make sure I hit on this point. To me, Elko's ability it's not just like, hey, they have dudes up front. His ability, and I've seen this take from some people that like have really followed him throughout his career, and even Kellen Mond was talking about kind of disagreeing with kind of how they've maybe handled the quarterback thing, but tacked on a compliment as well. And I'm paraphrasing, but basically said like, this guy is one of the best he's ever seen at drawing up different pressure packages and looks. And so it reminds you a little bit of Brent Venables 2 weeks ago, where you just have to be ready for everything. And we've seen at times those sort of, you know how it is on the O-line, if you pass off, they call it like pass off a game where, let's say there's a twist or a stunt, and you have to, as a guard or tackle, you have to in real time kind of communicate and pass off who's getting who. You can do that 8 times. If you do it right, nobody really notices. And then that time where both guys go for the same defender and then the other defender loops around and gets a free shot at your quarterback, everybody's going, what are they doing out there?
Yeah.
But to be fair, that has happened to South Carolina. You would probably say more than you want this year. And so when you're going up against a guy who, is going to bring you a bunch of different looks, he may smell blood in the water in terms of the different things he would do. It really never became a huge factor 2 weeks ago against Oklahoma because of the way that game started. As you said, dude, you're not going to count on that again. It's not going to be that lightning probably is not striking twice. So I think for Carolina, if you do get into one of these just SEC slugfests and you're having to face those things, I'll be curious to see. Fans hate conservative play calling. They just do. Yes. And so do I.
Yeah.
Nobody likes to watch it.
Yeah.
But how does South Carolina balance giving themselves a chance to move the ball while also not getting in those spots to where you look back and you're probably, as an offensive coach, saying, we should have just been conservative there.
Yeah, you can't live in 3rd and 9 against this team, because then we're gonna watch the sky cam next week and say, what is it like? This looks like from an and one mixtape. This thing that Elko's putting out all these different formations. He's bringing guys from everywhere. He's got guys. There'll be 3-man front, 5-man, 4-man. There'll be everybody standing up at the line. And for an offensive line that, like you said, has had some trouble picking things up. Hey, LSU has the best offensive line probably in the country from a pass protection standpoint, and they had trouble with it, right? So you do not want to live in 3rd and 9. I go back to your point that you made earlier about working the problem in reverse a little bit. You might not be able to line up and say, let's be conservative. Let's see if we can get 4 yards on this first down. Texas A&M is probably thinking the same thing. Mike Elko's probably calling his defense of, let's crowd this thing. Let's not let them run the ball on early downs. Let's get them in 3rd and 9. So to loosen them up, to change the way that they're calling the game, you might have to pass it or come up with something different on first down. But at the same time, that's a risk. So, that tension is going to be interesting.
Yeah, you may have to be aggressive on first down, but then if you do find yourself in some of those 3rd and longs, be a little bit, you might get a couple boo birds from the stands, but you may just have to live with it and be a little bit more conservative. Maybe what do they have at punter?
I don't know. They do not. The only thing that I don't know
is that they don't have Guy Kroger.
They don't have Braden Mann. You remember him from back in the day?
Yeah.
He averaged like 80 yards a punt. He is no longer on the roster. Hadn't been for a while, but I don't know. It's a good question.
So, if you get into one of those defensive battles, maybe Kai, the most popular punter in South Carolina history, just saying. Shout out to our girl, Marcy. That's D Knight's aunt.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Marcy.
She'll be at the game, I bet.
Yep.
Let's close this thing out, man. I'm trying to think if we've hit on – I know we haven't hit on everything, but Le'Veon Moss for A&M, pretty good. I want to call him Le'Veon Bell, but it's just the natural inclination there. But he's good. Their running game – is this the best running game Carolina's faced?
Well, you factor in Marcel Reed as well, the zone read game. They'll run – they have some different looks out of the zone read too that are cause LSU fits.
LSU had never seen a zone read
apparently
in their life.
Yeah, it probably is.
Moss is like good, and
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think he gets talked about, but I feel like, I don't know. I feel like Gamecock fans don't. We haven't talked about him all year. Like, oh, this guy.
he doesn't get as much love as he probably should.
Yeah. They've been very good in the running game. So, and yeah, not just QB run. They've been good at that, at the running back position. Kind of is a little bit of a throwback, like just superstar. I don't know, superstar, but he's a stud running back. So can't let him get going, obviously, early on in this one. Let's see. Travis says, big recruiting weekend, ton of kids.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody go check that out on Gamecock Central. We also have a quick recruiting roundup, about 10 minutes that Kendall Smith and I did. It's also on the Insiders Forum, and it's free on youtube.com/Gamecock Central. But, Chris, let's see. 4 known non-Gamecock commit official visitors this weekend.
Yes, definitely put me on the spot. And then you got the possibility, Wes, of some other guys, some surprises. There have been surprises every home game, right?
Unofficially,
yes,
but
probably.
But yeah, and I hesitated to say 4 uncommitted guys because a bunch of these guys are committed to other schools,
but not.
Yeah, so you got Jimmy Bryson,
yep,
offensive lineman who actually plays for Eric Kimry
at Baylor School
in Tennessee. You've got a couple of guys from Irmo, but one that plays at Irmo, one that plays at Dutch Fort. You got Josh Smith, the listed as an edge but plays linebacker.
Yep.
And
Dutch
then,
Fort.
Of course, Donovan Murph at Irmo High, stud who reclassed from 26 to 25. And who am I forgetting?
Who are you forgetting? I was thinking of one unofficial. We'll throw this at the people. Do you know that Damola at a Jehu? We'll go with that.
At a G. Yeah, we'll go with that.
We'll go with that. Committed to Georgia Tech. Just went to Ohio State. He's been to Carolina already taken his official visit.
Kelton McKell.
He'll be back for an unofficial 4-star offensive lineman they're trying to flip. Yes, the other official visit, Kelton McKell, who goes to Jones County Community College in Mississippi.
Committed to Liberty.
Technically,
but has gotten just...
Yeah, Georgia, Miami, South Carolina, etc. And good shot with them. Really good shot with all those guys that you just mentioned, I would say.
Yeah. And Carolina all-out assault on Georgia Tech's O-line class.
Yes, coming for blood.
So keep an eye on that. Dude, Jalen McGill, running back, in-state guy.
4-star 2026 running back.
Another visit to Columbia. I feel like that's a follow the visits situation. So all the other details on GamecockCentral.com. Y'all go check that out. That's a few guys to keep an eye on. All right, it's final thought and final prediction time. Chris, one final thought, final prediction.
Final thought. I think this game, look, I pointed out earlier, South Carolina, as the turnovers have gone, they have gone. They've won the turnover margin. They've won the game. Lost it. They've lost. A&M's had some of all of it, right? They've been more all over the map. But I think that is probably still the critical stat for South Carolina. This team's built to play defense, hit a few explosive plays, do enough offensively, play field position. It's not a bad thing to see Kai Kroger out there punting, right? I think your defense can do enough to carry you. This will be a close one. Come down to a few plays, come down to turnover margin. I think Carolina wins that turnover margin. Fourth quarter game wins. I've got 21-20, South Carolina.
1 point.
I did the 1-pointer.
Woo.
Yep.
I think Williams-Brice could be the difference. South Carolina, our guy Chris Pascal, his column this week, what did he point out? They have not lost an SEC night game at Williams-Brice Stadium since 2021. And I believe are 6-1 in overall night games during that span because they lost to Clemson last year at night. I think Willie B can be the difference. I think it's going to have to be because this is a very talented A&M team. But I also think it's fascinating. The line on this game is only 2.5.
Yep.
And typically when this sort of just casual fan or non like South Carolina or A&M fan sees a line that just seems a little bit off to them, that generally in my experience, Vegas knows. Like these are actually 2 fairly even teams, even if the records would not show you that. I think both defensive lines will have a fantastic night. who can just make a couple extra plays to go win the game will be the difference. And I think if you're at home, you weirdly like your chances to do that. So I think it's in the 20s as well. Something about 24-21 is screaming at me. Field goal game. I hesitate. I almost went a little higher, but I'm gonna go with that. 24-21, South Carolina. Homer pick, I admit it, but we'll see what happens, man. Williams-Brice at night. It's been impressive. So, what else you got, man?
That's it.
Yep, you done? Brent, what y'all got going on here, man? What should we tell the people?
Tell them to come get geared up for Saturday night. Weather might be a little bit cooler.
Yep.
So come get an LP pullover.
Yeah, there you go. Get you an LP pullover. We're at BP Skinner here on Gervais Street in the Vista, and we're doing this on Thursday, so you got all day. Friday to come in, Saturday
10 to 2.
Saturday 10 to 2. Yeah, it might be a little bit chilly at night, like Brent said. So y'all come by, see us here, and Chris and I will be back on Monday afternoon to talk about whatever we see on Saturday. Monday morning, 9 a.m. There you go. All right, it's been GC Live. Appreciate y'all joining us as always. Shout out to Brent. Again, y'all come out and check him out at BP Skinner here in the Vista. And Chris and I will see you Monday morning.